Good afternoon. Welcome to Seattle University's Winter Conversations program, today about societal happiness. We are delighted to be speaking with Consul General of Finland, Her Excellency Minna Laajava. Thank you so much, Consul General, for making the trip and spending this time with us. Our program is sponsored by Seattle University's Department of Public Affairs and Nonprofit Leadership and the Department of International Studies. Seated next to me is Seattle University senior Naho Umitani. She's majoring here in economics and public affairs. And lucky for all of us, Naho will lead us off.
Consul General, I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. Now, Finland has been named the happiest country on Earth for 8 years in a row. Now, we don't know yet about 2026. That comes out in March. But the big question is, why? Why do you think Finland comes off as so happy or content in this measurement?
Thanks a lot. And first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about Finland, to talk about Finnish society and our values. It is very fitting. I've been in Seattle since Sunday night. Big weekend, by the way. Congratulations, everybody.
We'll take it.
Yeah. And I've been discussing how Finland and Washington can foster our close ties and cooperate more. And in a lot of meetings, the issue of common values comes up. We do have common values, we have common history, and therefore it's very fitting to touch upon this topic. Being the happiest country in the world for 8 consecutive years is of course a huge opportunity to showcase Finland, our values, our society, and our culture. It's an important tool for us diplomats for the visibility of Finland. It's country branding for us. It's a nice brand, and it also provokes a certain kind of curiosity towards Finns and Finnishness and Finland, and I'm really happy to touch upon that. Why we've been consistently ranked as the happiest country in the world is the discussion of today. But I must say it has been something that has been built in our society for a long time. And it's certainly not a personality trait of Finns, as a lot of my fellow Finns know. But it's about the infrastructure for happiness that we have set up throughout the years, and I'm happy to give a little bit more detail on the elements of that. But that's about the bottom line.
Consul General, what is a solid working definition of happiness in Finland? I admit that before I met with you, remember back in October, and started reading a little more, I thought that the definition had more exuberance, more outright glee than you folks intend.
I would actually define it as certain preconditions for well-being in society, trust and being content in how the society is supporting individuals, what kind of culture we have fostered, etc. So it's, Finns are not necessarily the ones that laugh the most or smile the most. We're pretty chilled. Sometimes a little bit, not necessarily the most social ones in the room. So it's a certain kind of happiness. But this study is really about the society that we live in and the trust in institutions.
Now, this leans in perfectly for my next question. You touched on trust, and I was reading one of the comments of one honorary consul general who explained Nordics are so happy because, quote, we trust each other and share similar values, not abstractly, but practically. As neighbors, colleagues, and friends, reliability is assumed rather than negotiated, end quote. It sounds quite comforting. Consul General, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I must say, we do have a very, very high trust in our institutions, in our political decision makers, government in general, governance. And I think it already starts in school. We have a very, very good universal school system. Very kind of we're at an early stage. The infrastructure that children grow up with is quite simple, trustworthy. So I think it starts at a very early stage. Then regarding kind of how we trust each other, I think I was reading that we rank high in the so-called wallet test. So if you lose a wallet, you're very likely to get it back. I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptic on that, but apparently we rank high on that. So you do feel that there is more inherent trust in people doing the right thing. Of course, we have crime as well. We have people who have bad intentions, so it's not a dreamland for sure. But I think the trust builds with time.
Thank you. Now, Finland is a democracy and a capitalist country, but it also combines free market capitalism with strong social welfare and strong public services like universal healthcare, education, and parental leave. How does this model contribute to happiness?
Well, I think we have very strong safety nets, and that has been a major part of our society for a long time. Like you mentioned, there's universal health care, public schools, daycare. That's extremely cheap, subsidized. So there is a lot of kind of institutions that we have. However, economic times are not the easiest at the moment, so we do have a debate on how much can we kind of sustain all of these wonderful institutions and this social welfare net in the future. So, but I think since we call it in relation to the happiness index, we call it the infrastructure of happiness that we have built out through the generations, and now the question is, how long can we keep it up, having this kind of excellent quality of services. And of course, these kind of societal issues are not only limited to Finland. Everybody's going through the same thing. But it's something that the Finns value very much. I also read that we're happy taxpayers. 90% of Finns believe that paying their tax is an important civic duty to pay for all of this, to pay for our good institutions. So that's an interesting trait as well, that probably doesn't exist here.
That rings my follow-up because I really want to know about that. Finns, your rates are among the highest, your individual tax rates are among the highest in the world. In some places, high taxes make people more irritable, less happy, more worried. But why not in Finland? And by the way, I want to tell you something about the city of Seattle. The city of Seattle is generally not trying to lower taxes. We're almost always trying to raise them.
Just so I give you a realistic view of Finns, of course, taxes is a political issue in Finland as well. But I think when it comes down to questions of, are you willing to pay tax to have good health care? Are you willing to pay tax to have a good school? That's where the Finns often answer, yes, that's money well spent. But taxation as a general topic is a political question, and there are differing views on how high that should be, etc.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, on the note of hard times, I'm an economics student, and so I've been trained to look into labor statistics. And according to Reuters, Finland's unemployment rate has soared to over 10%, making it the highest rate in more than 15 years. You mentioned that Finland has great social safety net policy. Could you explain further how can Finland be so happy with such a high unemployment rate?
All the questions are. How are you so happy? Yes. Yes.
Yeah, good question. And in fact, one of the most important jobs that we as diplomats have when we represent Finland abroad is really to work for better trade relations, to promote Finnish business opportunities, to get investments in Finland. This is an important task for us here. In addition to all the other things that we're doing as diplomats, but the economic outlook is not great, and it's a real cause for concern. I have a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, and especially the older one is really worried about futures and jobs and so forth. So it is a huge topic. However, I think coming back to the happiness indicator and the happiness report, it's basically focused on one question about rating your life from 0 to 10, and somehow we still kind of manage to rate our happiness level at a high level, and it doesn't include kind of the amount of money you have or your other we kind of see our well-being more broadly, so that may be one factor that has contributed to that. It's interesting to see now what happens in March. Whether we still succeed, but it's a valid point. Of course, these are troubling statistics for us, and the government is doing a lot of policy changes to turn that trend to another direction.
Consul General, Finnish happiness is closely connected to something you folks call sisu. Did I say it right? Resilience, determination, courage. A recent story in The Economist said that Finnish children are taught really early on to walk or bike to school alone. American kids used to do that, not as much these days, to be fair. What would you say to parents in the United States who find the practice compelling, but sort of, unachievable right now?
Yeah, I remember my American friends who moved to Finland. And they were almost shocked to see these young kids walking around with their backpacks going to school. And I had never looked at that through that lens of being shocked and thinking, why aren't the parents taking care of the kids? For us, it was kind of a very natural thing, because in general, the cities and the towns have been safe and everybody does it. It doesn't mean that of course the parents are taking precautions and worrying like any parent would do, but it's just the way that we have always kind of been organized. However, of course, the world changes as well. Helsinki is not as safe as it used to be when I was young. Even in small towns, things happen, but I think this element of giving children responsibility at an early age, controlled responsibility of having that independence to do things, really makes them stronger long term, and does kind of build their personality. As regards sisu, that is perhaps more of a personality trait or something that's very common for Finns, this kind of perseverance. I hope you're aware of our quite difficult history, our several wars, a difficult civil war, the Russian attacks and the war with them, etc. The history has not been simple, but we've always kind of managed, and the people and the population was extremely strong, and we've always kept our independence in our own mind and our own way. Sisu would be almost a topic for another debate because it has so many dimensions to it.
Finnish parents have a practice that would get them arrested in other countries. They have babies nap outside in temperatures as cold as negative 17 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I'm from Hawaii, so this seems unimaginable. Is this really a common practice? And if so, why aren't the children sicker?
Yes, it's a common practice. And I also remember my American friend who moved to Finland being shocked about that. But she had a baby during those years in Finland, and she started putting them to sleep. That doesn't mean that you leave the baby alone in the darkness for the whole evening.
Go to work or something.
Or the night. This means short naps outside when the baby is very well dressed, tucked in, and usually they get a good nap out there. Of course, you monitor them. You don't leave them by themselves, but often it gives the mothers a little bit of a rest, and the baby sleeps a little bit better. But we've been doing that also for all of our lives, and it's never harmed or hurt anybody. And these children grow up to be very happy Finns.
Fairly. The Finnish, and you touched on this, the Finnish education system is often cited as a model for the whole world. Finnish children rank amongst the highest in literacy, well-being, and life satisfaction. One expert says this does not come from more academic pressure, maybe a legitimate dig at some other countries. It comes from a strong desire to protect childhood. Why does it work the way it works? What are some of the elements that seem to make it so successful?
Good question, and I do have actually a personal story regarding this. My son was about 3 when I lived in Paris, and he went to a French school. By around 4, 5, he was doing perfect French cursive and reading and speaking French and doing all the fancy stuff. My daughter, who was younger, didn't do that. And then we moved to Finland, and my son went to Finnish first grade. And in Finnish first grade, normally a lot of the kids, some kids know how to read, but it's not a requirement. You can come to first grade and kind of learn that year. And he was bored out of his mind because he'd done these things like years ago. So he was basically, wanted to play sports the whole time. And then my daughter went through the Finnish system of actually kind of learning to read and write in the normal Finnish pattern, kind of right before first grade, etc., using that first grade to actually learn those skills. And then when I look at those 2 kids, there's absolutely no difference when they were 8. They were at the same level. One had learned to do everything super early, and the other one in a more relaxed fashion, having more of that kind of playtime during her youth. So, it's just the way that our system has been created. Another strength is that the Finnish schools have a small break after each class. So you basically have classes that last from 45 minutes to maybe an hour. And then you have a break of 10 minutes. You go out and play, and then you come back in. So people have intensive study time, then they have a break, and then they go home pretty early in the afternoons when they are young. So you have that combination of having enough time to play, be outside, get fresh air, and still the learning results are quite good. And I think this kind of personal experience of seeing different kinds of systems has really proved that, there are just, this system works as well as any other, but it just has a different kind of setup and starts a little bit maybe later. that doesn't mean that Finnish students are not stressed. Trust me, I've had stressed children with a lot of schools and exams and etc. So it does kind of pick up, but the early years are fairly chilled and relaxed.
On the note of teaching, in Finland, teachers are required to hold a master's degree. Teaching is considered a highly respectable profession, and they are well compensated. How has Finnish government achieved this feat?
Yes, Finnish teachers are very well educated. This has been the result of kind of organized university teacher training, and it's a result of many years. Traditionally, in smaller towns around Finland, teachers were very respected, and it's a challenge to keep that up in nowadays. Of course, sometimes the conditions in which they work are not the easiest. So we try to keep that kind of respect and. For enough to have enough qualified teachers in the future, they're doing a really important job.
Now, Consul General, I must ask, Finnish society is fairly monochromatic. While the country is slowly diversifying, around 90% of the country is white. How much of the Finns' educational success can be attributed to this homogeneity? Would the Finnish education system be successful in our multicultural classrooms, such as in New York, in Chicago, and even in Seattle?
I think there's been a huge change throughout the years. The last kind of 15 years, things have changed. In my youth, I must say, when you looked at a class picture, most kids were blonde and blue-eyed, and maybe a couple of brunettes, and that was that. But now it's much more multicultural, much more. So I think there is a huge change in culture, and this has been. Of course, a challenge to incorporate this kind of thinking and taking different cultures into account as our population changes, which is of course a completely natural development. But we still have the same school system. We still get the same good results. And a lot of families who immigrate are super happy with the Finnish school system that we have. So, yeah, I think we're still getting very good results. But of course, things have evolved with time.
Consul General, as a journalist, I am fascinated by the fact that Finns teach media literacy to young children early, like preschool. Children learn, as I understand it, how to recognize bad information from good, fact from fiction. How do you teach that, especially to youngsters?
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic, and it's something that we're very proud of. In my own children, I did see it at kind of an early age. There's a lot of different elements to that. We have a very good. Traditionally, Finns have been watched a lot of news. This was something that was always done at a certain hour, 8:30. Everybody sat around the TV and watched news. There were two big news events, 8:30 and 10, and most families had those TVs on. So I think we all grew up with this kind of watching the news culture, which probably contributed to that. Of course, now we have streaming, and people are not watching the news as regularly anymore, but they're streaming them. This was probably part of the culture. There's also been a high emphasis on reading. We have a really good public library network. The schools are doing a lot. So those are perhaps the foundations of it. Then kind of from recent, there's a lot of misinformation out there in social media, but also in kind of hybrid attacks or all kinds of misinformation, often coming from related to different issues, and perhaps this is the most challenging factor. We do make sure that there are different that there's for instance nowadays the Finnish broadcaster circulates news in various different languages, which is really good. There's news in Russian and English and so forth. So there's always an option to kind of make sure that what you're getting is the real thing. But I think this is an ongoing challenge for all of us. We have to evolve our media literacy skills all the time.
Consul General, Finland shares 830 miles of border with Russia. Why aren't you all just plain nervous instead of so darn happy?
In addition to being happy, we're all also extremely resilient. And the resilience is based on a concept of comprehensive security. And we're actually very, very defense-oriented. And being happy doesn't mean that we lack awareness, and we're actually very security conscious. The comprehensive security model is also based on the same factors that pertain to the happiness indicator, and this is trust in institutions and working together. The comprehensive security model means that being secure doesn't only mean that we have good defense forces, we are part of the NATO alliance, we have good internal security, we have competent police, etc., and border protection. It's about a network of ordinary citizens, institutions, businesses, etc., all playing into the security of our country. So we have a whole system of using everybody in potential times of crisis. And one example of this is our national defense courses, which are organized 4 to 5 times a year. And they involve people who work in the private sector, public sector, there's government officials, there's politicians, there are people who work in the media, there are all kinds of people coming from different businesses that are important for national security and national security of supply. And these courses are a fabulous way to highlight this network and teach the foundations of security and the defense, and certainly our defense forces, on what Finnish defense is all about. We spent I just recently did one. We spent 3 weeks of intensive time together, and this was just a really fabulous experience for the whole group. There was 50 of us, and this is one element that we have, and we've been doing these courses for I think 30-40 years already.
Now, I understand your background is in security. Now, Finland joined NATO in 2023, requesting membership shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine. Why was this so important? And how does security of being a NATO member play into this Finnish confidence?
It is the choice that we made. Being an ally is really, really an important factor to our security. We provide security also to NATO by securing this huge border with Russia. We have extremely credible defense forces with a conscription system. We make significant resource and spending in defense, etc. So this was really an important decision that we made, and I'm personally was very happy that we took this step after so many years of just being a close partner to NATO. It was just at the right time.
Can I just jump in here for 1 second? Did either of your children serve in the military? And if they did, how does that connect young people to the country and contentment and all of that?
Yeah, my son will do it starting next January. He's put it off because he's been studying for a few years now. This is an important moment in any Finn's life. It's a very good positive experience. It does perhaps give a little bit of a reality check what defending your country is all about. And by the way, the willingness to defend Finland by Finns is at a very high percentage. It's almost 90 consistently. So there is a culture that is very strong, and we really feel that it's important. Going to do the military is also open to women, so we do have women doing it on a voluntary basis as well, and they're very happy with the experience. It's perhaps always not the easiest time for our youth to do it. It's tough to be away for, you can do it either for 6 months or a year. Tough training, but it's usually, once they have done it, people are very happy about it.
Thank you. Now, to touch a little bit more about Finnish preparation, I read in a New York Times article that Finland is often referred to as the prepper nations of the Nordic. Now, I read that Finns never stopped stockpiling various resources after the Cold War, and this proved very useful during the COVID-19 pandemic. Could you tell us a little bit more about this and how this attitude of preparing for the worst contributes to contentment?
Yeah, we have a very strong culture of security of supply, and this is a part of the comprehensive security model that we have. This was extremely useful, and I think raised awareness within our population also during the COVID times. One of the most visited kind of tourist attractions. It's not a tourist attraction, but a lot of our foreign guests and politicians visit. We have a really big network of shelters around the big cities and also the smaller cities. So it's almost become a must part of any dignitary's visit to Finland. They always want to go see the underground shelters that we have built, which are immense, that are created for those situations where there would be a crisis and we would have to have most of the population safe and secure for in these shelters. So they're quite a elaborate construction.
Switching topics a little bit, Finland has more saunas than cars, and your amazing person here in Seattle, Christina, said sauna, corrected me, sauna, okay. One groundbreaking study of 2,300 men, I bet you've heard about this a lot because I've seen it cited in a couple places. The study showed that those who use a sauna 4 to 7 times a week slash the risk of cardiovascular death by 40%. That's astonishing. Do Finns, how do they do this? They have gym access, saunas in their homes? And how do they fit it into a busy schedule unless they're in there kind of briefly, right?
I think this is a personal choice.
You're there for an hour.
Whether you like to be there for 20 minutes or 5 or how often you do a sauna, but a sauna is something that is kind of a normal thing to have in the house or your flat, or there's nothing. We don't regard it as a super luxury, but we regard it as the most relaxing place. And people really feel that it gives them a place to relax, and yeah, this kind of statistics is I haven't heard that, and that's amazing. If that is
Rather impressive,
valid.
I'll say.
On the note of urban design, Nordic and Scandinavian countries are known for smart urban design. How does Finland in particular use design to create spaces that make people happy?
I think perhaps the connection with nature would be an element. Some of the architecture and the architects that we have nicely combine nature and wood and kind of calm colors. Maybe this is part of the secret of kind of creating that calm atmosphere. Finns are of course nature oriented. In Finland, nature is not a luxury; it's kind of something that we have everywhere. And a lot of Finns really, it's for some people it's the sauna, for others it's having a nice walk in the evening in the forest or green spaces around where you live. It's a part of our kind of everyday thing that we do.
Like an Italian passeggiata or something.
Yeah.
Right. Out there.
Thank you. Now, homelessness is a crisis in our American cities. Helsinki is easily one of the coldest cities in the world. How has Finland tackled this issue?
We don't really have kind of homelessness of people living on the streets. Of course, we do have people who don't have necessarily permanent housing and need help and support in that, but we don't have anybody sleeping around.
Well, how is that possible? How? I mean, they have so much government support that you're able to provide those services.
I think we have that, and we make sure that kind of there are shelters and there's programs to get people into some kind of having some kind of roof on their head. So, and of course the temperatures are extremely severe. I just came back from Finland, be there for 10 days, and I, it was minus 15 centigrade for most of the time. So you cannot imagine anybody not, you cannot be outside for the night.
An American filmmaker spent 5 years traveling across the U.S. asking people if they were happy. This filmmaker didn't define happiness for the people that he spoke with. He let them explain. He came to the conclusion that happiness is like a muscle, more of a decision, and we've all sort of touched on this a little bit here today, but more of a decision to be grateful for what we already have. What about that? Like, is that part of this sort of Finnish take on happiness? That you be grateful, that you're not reaching for so much, you're not trying to become the richest person, that you accept what you have and have contentment about that.
It could be. I think the happiness is also about kind of being grateful for those simple things that work. Like I outlined, kind of having that trust, having an equal society, having those green spaces, having good health care, having good schools, having a culture of well-being, being able to have in most cases, a pretty balanced work-life balance where you work hard, but then you have opportunities during your life to take time off and be with your children as needed. I think these kind of elements are something that you appreciate, and of course the safety, the calmness, all of those are things that you learn to appreciate, and often when you live abroad, you realize how important those things are that you have in Finland. I remember when I was living in London, I'd been there for 3 months, and I went back to Finland on my own and opened my flat's or my house door, and then I just sat there for probably a half an hour, and I was just listening to the silence, and I felt like I hadn't been listening to the silence for months because I had been in wonderful and exciting London and listening to a lot of noise.
Now, Finland has a low birth rate, around 1.3 children per woman. This is well below the replacement level. But does low birth rate help with contentment, or is this an issue?
Oh, we love the kids.
This is actually a huge question for us that causes quite a lot of worry, and there's been all kinds of ideas of how we can reverse this statistic. So this is not related to happiness.
So Finns are funny in an understated way. I'm talking about how they invent or just come up with some pretty wild, unusual sports, like wife carrying contests. You can explain that. Rubber boot throwing contests. Phone, I guess it's all about Nokia. They throw those phones. What's up with this approach to?
Yeah, I think Finns are pretty quirky.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, we talk a lot in my profession about country branding, and often these kind of funny things about Finland come up, and we're encouraged as diplomats just to say that Finns can be a little bit quirky. These are the things that make us special.
Is it sort of like, and this does sound comforting to me anyway, that Finns have an attitude that it doesn't matter that much if everybody sort of agrees with or likes what you're doing, but maybe it makes you more at ease. What do you think of that?
Yeah, probably. I don't know where.
Yes. No. Well, just something to consider then, right?
I grew up watching Moomin as a child. Very quirky show. Now, my next question is about Sanna Marin, the former Prime Minister of Finland. She was 34 years old when she began serving, and my question is, do Finnish women feel connected to government because of this?
I think like the idea, more of the idea is also about women in government. And Finland has a lot of women in government. Washington State, for many years when I was writing about politics for the Seattle Times, we always had, state of Washington always had either the highest percentage of women in the legislature or the second highest. And we would trade off with Maine and New Hampshire. And so I think, how does that connect? And I think even more like, we'd love to know if you think women govern differently or better or any of that. I will tell you our U.S. Senator Patty Murray told me yes. She did. She did.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted question, the question of leadership and what are female leaders like, etc. No, we are very proud of the fact that that we do have Finns, females in leadership positions, and in fact at the foreign ministry at the moment there are more females than males, and we have a lot of ambassadors at top levels that are female. So we've come a long way. But as regards politicians, I think it's a really welcome trend, and hopefully encourages young women to enter into politics as well, to have these kind of leadership figures that are doing these jobs. Of course, this has not always been like that. Politics was a male sport in Finland for a long time as well. So, but it just proves that we have a society that values equality, and there's lots of opportunities that have grown because of that.
You mentioned a few minutes ago how delighted you were to come back to your home and how you loved the silence. So you can tell we've been reading a lot about Finland here, and one thing we picked up is that silence is kind of popular or part of the etiquette on public transport. And I don't think Seattle's the noisiest metropolitan area, but we're not the quietest either. So my question is, tell us more about like this preference for personal space, for quiet, and how does that contribute to the topic that we're discussing today, like contentment?
Yeah, often if you take the bus around rush hour, all the Finns kind of take the seat that has an empty seat next to it, and only by force do you start filling those extra seats where you have to sit.
Oh, wow.
Next to
What do they do on airplanes?
the same phenomenon.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of something that we always joke about, the kind of Finnish space and personal space, and our tendency to be quiet, and kind of how everybody understands that. Often when we start meetings, it may start with this weird little silence, 2 minutes where nobody starts, and then I don't know. It's a very cultural thing.
That sounds like.
But we're very aware of these things, and
No, but I mean, do they contribute, do you think, to what we're addressing here today? Those few moments of silence on a bus, a train.
could be. I think this is a personality matter. Yeah.
But the way you describe, you know, the silence before anybody speaks, kind of reminds me the old days in Seattle, not now, but Seattle ice at a 4-way stop. You go, no, you go, and they just stay there, and it's like people do need to get somewhere at some point here, right? So they have to go at that point. You touched on something a couple minutes ago about money. And I spoke to the previous honorary consul general here in Seattle, Matti Suoko. Correct me if I got it wrong. And you touched on this, but I want to hear a little bit more. He said something that stayed with me, that Finns don't try to get ultra rich. They're happy if work-life balance is going well. You know, stressing, and you know, Americans really do need to stop and think about this for a second, that happiness comes from other things than money.
It's very hard to generalize on that matter. I think, like I explained, there are like simple factors that pertain to this kind of happiness index that are not related perhaps to personal wealth, but I mean, there are, of course, like anywhere, there are Finns that want to succeed, Finns that are want to succeed and be successful, and have the money that's related to their success. I wouldn't generalize.
I saw that Finland's trying to hire, you know, folks who are getting laid off in the United States in some tech jobs too. Is that a big deal right now in Finland, trying to recruit talent? And
yeah, I think
there's because all of industry is changing before our eyes, right?
Of course, and this is, I think, it's not limited to Finland. I think there is the search for having that talent and finding people who know their stuff, and getting that attraction of talent, and making those incentives to attract foreign talent to Finland. Yeah, of course, it's important for us as well.
Now, I'd like to touch on social democracy and back to social safety net policy. American cities are moving in very wildly different directions. San Francisco, long associated with progressive policy, is moving more towards the middle. New York City and Seattle, on the other hand, are moving pretty left. And so I'm curious what you think about these different approaches and how they compare to social policy in Finland.
Huge topic. Really difficult to answer. Yeah, it almost requires a different conversation. Enormous question.
So I want to ask if there are any, I'm sure there are because everybody disagrees about a lot of stuff, but there must be some Finnish people who on a dark, cold winter night hear about this happiness stuff and say, I'm not buying it. I'm a skeptic and I don't have to believe. Or, what is there a percentage of the population, or do you have a name for the people who don't buy it? And just wondering about just different voices and thoughts about that.
Yeah, there must be some happiness skeptics around. I think we're kind of
Around or near? Or,
yeah.
no?
I don't know. But 8 years in a row, we're kind of used to it now. I think the first year that it came out, we were like, "What? Where did this come from?" But now I think it depends what happens next month. If we're not the happiest, will we be in a crisis? Who knows?
Well, that's actually an interesting point. Do you folks at all, I don't know, lobby for this, or it just comes down? But I read the questionnaire. It's almost like going to the doctor. How's your pain level? 0 to 10, and this is the questionnaire that gets folks to the conclusion that one country or another is happier than the other. And so I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, we don't lobby because we're too good to lobby. But I must say that there's always a little bit of competition between the Nordic states.
Well,
Denmark has their hygge. They have branded it well. You know what hygge is? It's about the candles and drinking some hot tea and having a very nice home. Well, I mean, Finns do the same thing. We do the candles, we drink the tea, we get cozy, we get to put woolen socks, but we didn't brand it enough.
oh, so that's what I mean. That's kind of what I mean. I also wanted to ask you about empathy classes. So, people tend to say, well, all the Scandinavian countries and Nordic, which includes Finland, things are going well there, and they all are good at design, and their education systems, and you sort of see them compete on different matters. I am wondering, you folks Denmark teaches empathy in their schools, and do you folks have that and sort of brag about that too? Because it's an interesting thing for us in America to hear that you teach. We do have some different, but civics classes, but those are under pretty big pressure to continue in many cities, in many schools. I see people shaking their head. They know that we don't even have that. But empathy classes, that's also part of your curriculum?
I'm not aware of having like empathy classes, but I think this is a part of what we generally are taught in lower schools, but I'm not aware of significant, distinct classes that are focusing on this.
So, and also, how do you feel about and I did this, remember when we first met? I did this. I think I called you Scandinavian, and you rightly corrected me. Just different backgrounds, is that correct? Just different, and tell us the Nordic versus the Scandinavian, and what might be different about that.
Do you mean culturally or?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, within the Nordics, there's a lot of similarities between all of us, but it's kind of like a family, and we feel like we understand each other, but there are very different. You put a Finn and a Swede, and there's like 1,000 jokes about how different we are, and then there are the Danes and the Swedes have their jokes, and the Norwegians and the Danes have their jokes. I mean, we are different, but our societies are very similar. and that's why there's always a little bit of this kind of who's the happiest and who has hygge and who has IKEA and who does better marketing and who has Santa Claus and who has meatballs and all of that. So
You might not love this question, but I'm going to try for it anyway. So a lot of people in the United States are feeling sad these days. And so I think one of the delightful ideas about this program was to look around the world and see what other countries are doing. So keeping it apolitical here, and you've touched on so many different things for me to think about, and for many people here to think about. What advice do you have to Seattleites, Americans, for how we can just feel better these days?
I think in general Americans are quite happy. You know, I always say that I've been in California since the beginning of September, and everybody's always asking me like, how do you like it there? And I say, what is there not to like? It's impossible to be in a bad mood. You have a great
LA
country,
freeway?
I think.
What about an LA freeway?
LA freeway, okay, that's another level of misery. But I think you have a great country. You have a wonderful culture. You have a lot of good things here to enjoy, and you're I think just appreciating what you have is the key to success.
So instead of you're happy and you know it, you're happy and you don't know it. Something like that.
I was fortunate enough to get to visit Finland, and I went to Turku and Helsinki. And I'm an architect, so I wanted to see all the great design. And what struck me about the tours I took was the first thing they wanted to take me to in both cities was the library. And Udi is jaw-dropping. And I love that the top terrace puts everybody on the level with the legislature across. But the role of literacy and the obvious role of the library as the center of life, do you think that's key to your lifestyle, your happiness, your sense of community?
I think this is a really important factor, and it's something that we are making huge efforts to ensure that we have good funding for these libraries. We retain this culture of reading. Because in these times with the phones and the social media, of course, it's not so easy to keep this kind of culture alive. But we're putting a lot of effort into it, and I think it's part of having this access to all the books and information and news, that it's really contributed to an educated population that can kind of spot the fake news from the real news, or the real news from the fake news.
Hi, a fellow Finn here, also a Seattle University student. I lived in Seattle since September when I started my graduate studies here. We've been talking what makes Finnish people happy, but is there something that Finnish people could learn from America or Americans too?
I think there's lots of things that we can learn from Americans. One thing is being friendly in general, which is really great, and often an American way.
That is a good one, I think.
And this is something that Finns always take some time to warm up, and they keep their distance. Americans always say, "Hi, how are you? How can I help you?" That's a really good thing here, and part of the culture.
Thank you very much. Add a person for the U.S. That's great. That's great. Thank you again, folks, for coming out and participating, and just a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.